Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. I am T.J. Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, the one and only Mr. Taj Jackson.
What's up, T?
How are you, my brother?
Good.
Good to see you, my man. For everyone who's watching live with us on YouTube and Facebook, remember, we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who have experienced loss in our lives. We have been impacted by it, and we like to think we have learned from it. We like to share our opinions in an attempt to help you get through whatever it is you may be going through. Saying that if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please do not just rely on us. As I just mentioned, we are live on Facebook and YouTube, but you also could be listening to us via the podcast. That is correct. All episodes, all Power of Love show episodes, which is now over 250. Wow,
Yeah.
250 episodes are now available for streaming on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. There's some others that I'm not thinking of, but you get the gist. If you guys want to listen to us instead of watch us, maybe on the way to work, maybe on the way home from work, maybe on the way to school, however you want to consume our show, there's many options. So all we ask, if you're watching on a podcast or listening on a podcast, is to consider subscribing, and more importantly is consider leaving a review, because a positive review helps others who may need our content or are looking for our content. It helps them find it. So please, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or one of the podcasts, please consider, like I said, subscribing, following, and leave a review. Taj Jackson, we've done our intro. I would love to know, how have you been? How is your last week going? What is going on?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been extremely hot everywhere. I think that's kind of what everyone's kind of dealing with right now. I got a fan in the background. Normally I have two fans down here in my little man cave, but it's one of them so loud that it can't go on right now. I'm a traditional person, so I still rock the sweater, even though that was a stupid idea. But it's only for this show. I'm taking it off as soon as the show ends.
That sounds like me.
Yeah, but I mean, everything else is going well. My daughter has a little sniffles, and so she didn't go to school today or preschool today, and because everyone else had caught it prior, like in the days before. But we kind of pressed our luck, and now it's our turn. But you've gone through all this. You know all that whole drill and everything. This is all new to me still.
It's funny you say all this though, Taj, because I will say, I think it was even yesterday we were on a phone call, and one of the babies was crying, and it just gave me a flashback to like 10 years ago from what I was dealing with babies and stuff. And it was just very interesting and cool to hear you handle and be a parent. I will say this, as for my week, I had just gotten back from Cannes. Of course, 2 weeks ago we had our show in Nijmegen, which was a wonderful show. It's always wonderful performing as 3T. But the reason why I'm bringing all this up, Taj, is because I am wanting to encourage people out there to try to have experiences, travel, see the world, do things. As we get older, I think we hold on to memories more and more, and we realize that tangible things and physical material things mean less and less in our lives. So I just want to do my part and encourage you all to make memories and experiences with your loved ones and enjoy it. I went to Cannes, France. I think we went there once as 3T Taj, but it was more for work and it was quick, maybe for a radio show interview. But this time I got to go and enjoy it, and it was a really fantastic experience, and one that I'll always remember and cherish. So that's the encouraging thing I want to leave everyone with, is to go do things. And it doesn't have to be something as exotic as a foreign country in a wonderful part of that country, but just try different things. Maybe drive to a local city that you've never been to that's an hour away, or take a train. Make experiences with people you love. I think that's very important to remember, everyone.
And make time for yourself too to do it.
There you go. That's true. I think that's more of an American issue, but I'm still happy you mentioned that, Taj.
Yeah.
Okay, so Taj, with all that said, we have a special show lined up. On today's episode of The Power of Love, we welcome not one, but two special guests. We welcome Patrice Karst and Dr. Dana Wyss. Patrice Karst has sold over 1 million copies of her book, The Invisible String, and she is the co-author of the Invisible String Workbook. Her other books include The Invisible Leash, The Invisible Web, and You Are Never Alone, An Invisible String Lullaby. The Invisible String book series is teaching the world about the string that even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it in your heart and know that you are always connected to everyone you love. That's really cool. I love that.
That is real cool.
Patrice has been on a lifelong mission to share the message that the energy called love transcends time and space, and is the most powerful force in all of the universe. Completely agree, Patrice. Born in London, England, she now lives in Southern California, where she is working on her memoir and is the mother of one grown son, Elijah. You can learn more about Patrice and her work by visiting her website, patricekarst.com. And that is spelled PatriceKarst.com. Now, for our other guest, Dr. Dana Wyss, who has a PhD, LMFT, ATR-BC, which means she's a very intelligent young lady. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, board-certified clinical art therapist, and co-author of the Invisible String Workbook. Her doctorate in expressing therapies has led her to create programs integrating art, music, poetry, dance, and animal-assisted therapy in the healing process for clients and the self-care of staff. For the last 20 years, Dr. Wyss has worked in psychiatric hospitals, group homes, and non-public school settings to manage crisis, conduct trainings, coach staff, and support children and families. Dr. Wyss is currently a corporate clinical training specialist and clinical art therapy supervisor at STARS Behavioral Health Group, a company specializing in the treatment of complex development trauma. She uses her creativity for her own healing as well as to support others. Here today to discuss the Invisible String and accompanying the Invisible String Workbook, without much further ado, yes, I always throw that much in there, please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Patrice Karst and the one and only Dr. Dana Wyss to the Power of Love show. Welcome, both of you. How are both of you ladies doing?
Good. That was a nice intro, TJ.
Yeah. It wasn't bad, right? I'm actually pretty proud of myself. I feel like I didn't butcher any words or names. I thought I did a decent job. Smooth. Patrice, we mentioned how you're heating up in the SoCal heat wave as well. I know it's a tough one. But I'm going to start with you if that's okay, because your book, The Invisible String, it's sold over 1 million copies worldwide and has been translated into 15 languages. First of all, hats off to you for that amazing, ridiculous accomplishment. That is something you should be very, very proud of. It's unbelievable. My question to you is, what initially inspired you to write The Invisible String, and did you anticipate it would be the success that it ended up becoming?
Oh man, no. I'll answer the second question first. I no clue, no idea. I had actually written a couple of adult books, a couple of spiritual self-help books, and I was still working a full-time job, and my son was in kindergarten, just started kindergarten, and when I would leave him in the morning, he would cry. He had really bad separation anxiety, and so he would cry and I would cry, and it just, we were both a mess. And one day, just as I was about to leave and we were about to go through the routine of him being upset, I said to him, really what was just obvious to me, which was that we are connected all day long, Eli, by an invisible string. And when you miss me, just tug on it and I'll feel it. And then I'll tug back and you'll feel it. And then I'll see you at the end of the day, but we're connected all day. And his eyes got big and he said, is there really an invisible string? And I said, there really is. And I kid you not, voila, that was it. His separation anxiety ended that day. And by the end of the day, or it might have been the next day, his friends were like, hey, is there really an invisible string? And I knew, based on just talking to all these kids, that there was something really special here, this sort of tangible explanation for the abstract concept of love, that you just tell kids they're connected by an invisible string all day. And the comfort of that was immense. So I knew I had something special.
Yeah.
A small publisher, and the rest is history. But no, I had no idea. I would have been happy to sell 500 copies, let alone, well over 1 million now. So yeah, no one could be more surprised than me.
Yeah. Well, see, because I can go so many places, but one is I am a future author. I like to say that, but writing a book is a serious endeavor. It takes a lot of work and a lot of commitment. So my question to you, Patrice, is you must have had what was the true intention of wanting to write the book? Because if you're telling me you've been happy with 500 sales, then I don't know if that was the goal of becoming a million selling author. What inspired you to write it?
Okay, so no, obviously I would have liked to have sold a lot more than 500, but I really didn't know, the kids book world and how many copies would sell. But I knew when I saw the reaction to my son and his friends that this could really be an important book for children. It's a book that I would have really benefited from as a child, because I suffered a lot of loneliness and a lot of grief and trauma. And it would have been very helpful had I have realized that I was connected to so many people by love. And so, yeah, my intention was just to help kids. And it was interesting because that it became the number one grief book for children is because on one page, there's one word that alludes to permanent physical departure. And it's when the children are asking their mom, can our invisible string reach all the way to Uncle Brian in heaven? And that one word on that one page turned it into the number one book for grief for children. But it was interesting because the publisher, the original, hardback publisher at the time, was very reticent to have the word heaven or to have anything that alluded to death in a children's book. So we actually, thought about it, quite honestly. We had to really, I had to hold my ground and said, it has to be there because I want children to know that this string, that this power of love, your show, the title is so perfect. This power of love is so incredible, so profound, so wondrous, so otherworldly, so phenomenal that it can not only reach everywhere on this planet, but it can reach into outer space, and it can reach to our loved ones in the great beyond, in heaven, wherever they are. There is still a connection. So really grateful that that stayed in there. And yeah, it's just a book about love, and it, for whatever grace, kismet, luck, the right book at the right time, I don't know. I just know that the message struck a chord and then it flew, and which lets me know that love is alive and well, despite outer appearances of how dismal the world can look sometimes. Love has always been number one. Love will always win. So
I want to read this comment from Lena, who's one in our community. Lena says, love this book. I got this for my son 10 years ago when he was going to school to help with separation anxiety. I used to tell him if he pulled on the string when he missed me, I'd feel it. He loved it. That must bring a smile and warmth to you to know that people around the world enjoyed it the way you intended it. I'm curious to know, and I think I know this answer, but I would love to hear it from you instead of me. Who is this Invisible String book for?
Everybody on the planet. You know, even though it's a children's book, it's crossed over into the adult market, and it makes sense because I think honestly everything we ever needed to learn ever, that's of true depth and importance in that way, you could really learn in kids' books. You don't need 400-page books to teach about love. So adults started buying it for each other, husbands for wives, adult children for their adult parents, and vice versa. When a neighbor was moving away, someone would give them the book, you know, to show that they'd still be connected. So it really did cross over into the adult world too. So who's the book for? Everybody. You know, I think we all suffer loneliness. I think we all suffer disconnectedness. So anything that's going to remind us that we are connected, we are not alone, is an important book, an important message. Yeah.
Fantastic. Before we get into how you two came together to collaborate on the follow-up work, which is called the Invisible String Workbook, Dr. Dana, why don't you tell us a little bit about your work and what inspired you to focus on expressive therapies that led you to create programs integrating art, music, poetry, dance, and animal-assisted therapy in the healing process for your clients, as well as the self-care of your staff?
So long time ago, probably even in high school, I grew up in Alabama, went to school in Florida, then moved out to California. And I had just always done coaching. I'd always been in sports. I'd been doing art kind of my whole life. And I had always been babysitting, nannying, working with kids that were struggling, even in high school, before I was even, I think, allowed to be doing this work. And then, you know, my dad is a neuroscientist and a pastor, if you can put those things together and figure that out. So it just kind of came family-wise, I guess, that this was going to be my career path. And being that I had already loved all those things, as I continued in, you know, my undergrad degree and my master's degree, it just made sense. So undergrad was psychology I did English and photography, and then moved out to California, did my art therapy degree, and just always knew that I was going to integrate all these things somehow. And I had the pleasure of working at Holly Grove when I moved out here, which is a children's home where kids lived there. They had been removed from their homes because of abuse and neglect, and they had behavioral problems and were struggling in communities. And I got to run groups with them and do cooking, and we had pet therapy come in, and I just fell in love with all of it. So did my art therapy master's, and then later got my doctorate in expressive therapies. And I just, until actually about 6 months ago, probably, I was working in those type of programs, psych hospitals, group homes where the kids live. I just recently, our company still owns those, but I now am a corporate trainer helping all the other staff understand how to do that. And, you know, we have a bunny at my place where I work that somehow I was finagled into purchasing and then taking care of for years. So somehow I got tricked into that. I was bringing in snakes and spiders. We have kids that had everything Patrice is talking about. They're disconnected. They're not with their loved ones. They might not even have loved ones with them that even want them. And we were trying to find ways to connect with them. And one of the kids that we were really struggling with said they'd love to play with snakes and spiders. And somehow I started bringing those in and learning about animal assisted therapy and saying, like, I don't think I can get these vetted as true animals, but like we can bring them in and let the kids play with them. And they loved it. And they loved it. They loved it because they were unique animals. And it was things that often people are scared of. And they shouldn't be, right? We brought in animals, you know, tarantulas are not all poisonous, right? We brought in tarantulas that weren't poisonous, but because they look like poisonous tarantulas, people are scared of them. So it became this really beautiful metaphor for what they experience in the world when their trauma really gets big and blows up and scares people and scares them. And so then my boss demanded I bring a fluffy bunny in, and somehow they didn't let that one leave. I would just bring the other ones to visit. And so I kind of became someone who ran all these and supported with our group services, bringing people in to do dance, music, poetry, and all this stuff. I mean, it's just, as someone who myself has healed through those ways, I just think it's so valuable to have those resources everywhere.
That's great. Now, the Invisible String obviously was published many years ago, actually, back in 2000. And the collaborative project, the Invisible String Workbook, was published just in 2019. So my question is, where did the inspiration to do a follow-up workbook, how did it originate, or where did it come from?
So I'll take this. It was the greatest. It was so awesome. So I had thought over the years, sometimes I'd seen, online that a lot of people were creating all kinds of activities to use with the invisible string, but I didn't know how to create activities. I, kind of just let it go. And one day I got a fan email, and it was from Dr. Dana. She wasn't a doctor yet. That's what's so interesting in the process.
Wow.
Working together, she got her PhD and became Dr. Dana Wyss, which we got to put on the cover of the book, which made my publisher extremely happy. So Dana wrote me a beautiful email and was telling me about the clients that, clientele she worked with, and how one of the women had been so moved by the invisible string that she created this beautiful card and poem, a gift for me. And she was going to mail it to me. And when I realized she was local, I said, well, let's go have lunch. I don't know. For some reason, God is good. God, you get things happen. I don't know why I don't ever do that, like, oh, let's go have lunch, to a complete stranger. But we went and we met at a French cafe in Venice for lunch. And Dana was telling me about, the work she did and all the activities that her and her fellow therapists had all created based on the invisible string. And it was like, ding, 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 ding. I was like, we should do a workbook. We should do a workbook together. And she loved the idea. And we literally, I kid you not, got a paper napkin and I wrote out a deal on the paper napkin.
Wow.
We would do this thing together. We would split it 50-50. And this is the day we're doing it. And we're signing it. And we did it. Dana went to work on it. I have to give her most of the credit for creating the activities. I kind of oversaw and what looked good and what didn't, and put my input. But she just kind of went out there and did it and presented this amazing workbook. But then it took years to get it sold because, as you guys know, in the creative business, just because you create something amazing, someone's got to buy it, right?
Yeah.
And it took years before we finally got it in the right hands, under the right eyes. And as soon as Andrea Spooner, who is our fabulous editor, at the publishing company Little Brown for Young Readers, which has published all of the Invisible books, she fell in love with the workbook. And so, yeah, that's how that all happened. So I kept, every year I would say to Dana, I feel like it's going to have just, I know it's taking forever, but I really think it's going to happen. I can't even tell you how exciting it was the day I got to tell her, guess what?
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. And
that is,
because, the idea that we can come out, the Invisible String Workbook is so full of amazing creative, because she's so creative. So it's poetry and journaling and coloring things and art and puzzles and games. And, and then there's all these like amazing cards that she painted with text that I came up with that they're perforated and they can break them up. And there's games and things they can do with these cards. And it's great. And so the Invisible String Workbook, and Dana probably has more she wants to say about it, but it really just helps children and adults. Believe it or not, we've had emails from adults that have taken the workbook and turned it into works of art with glitter and stickers and amazing things. But adults have used it too. But for the most part, it helps children take the message of the invisible string to the next level.
Yeah,
because it's such a profound message. And what the workbook does is give the children all these different implications and ways it can be, to further that whole concept of love and connectedness.
I think it's brilliant. Dr. Dan, I would love to hear something, your opinion, your input on this, but I just want to say, I think it's a great message. And I think you compounded it by making it interactive somehow and letting the reader or the one who's utilizing it do something about it, whether it's art or writing or whatever it is. It's fantastic. And I'm going to show the Invisible String it's now on the screen for those on Facebook and YouTube. That's the Invisible String as well as the Invisible String Workbook. They're available at Barnes & Noble's, IndieBound, and Amazon, hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. And there are some signed copies available directly on Etsy, signed by Patrice. So, Dr. Dan, I'd love to, if you want to follow what Patrice was just saying, or and I want to challenge you to also talk about the mission for the workbook.
Well, I think it's interesting to hear from a non-author's perspective of like reaching out to this author. So I was in the midst of doing my doctorate program. I had been using this book for years. I do training. I was a training director at the building I was at. So that means I was responsible for all the training on trauma, training on grief and loss, training on all this disconnection the kids were feeling. And I found this book and I was like, this is the perfect book. So I had been reading it to people for years. And the kids we had this set of kids that, we had lots of kids that have connected, but at this one moment in time, there's just kids and staff were connecting with this book in a way I'd never seen and writing poems and doing all this stuff. And, they shared it and I was reading it to a group and I was like, I should reach out to her. Ha ha ha. And they're like, yeah, you should. And I was like, yeah, right. She's going to write back to me. I had reached out to like a few other pretty prominent authors in the process of doing my doctorate just to maybe interview them or talk to them. No one ever writes back. And so I did it. And like within that same day, she wrote me back. And I was like, is this a joke? Like, is this really her? And I think it was probably that conversation that we had that had us meet, and the kids were so excited when I told them I was meeting with Patrice. And my doctorate and my dissertation work was on self-injury, and I joke that I was writing 2 books at the same time. So I was doing this really in-depth work on like self-injury and disconnection and kids that were and adults that were just hurting themselves and feeling so disconnected in the world. And I was also writing this workbook on like the power of love and connection and how to feel it. And people are like, how did you write 2 books at the same time? And I was like, I feel like one was my self-care from the other. Like, I feel like writing the workbook was what I needed to pull me out of the depths of like really having to look at this like history of trauma and this intense work I was doing in all these places. And I think the mission was similar to what Patrice said. I think she chose me because when we connected at lunch that day, she said, you don't just understand this book, you understand everything underneath this book. Like you understand everything about it, and just trying to make sure no one ever feels that sense of disconnection and loneliness. And, I work with a lot of kids that have suicide ideation and that just don't feel like they belong in the world. And I just wanted to give something more to them if possible. And everybody else, because we all struggle.
And you did. And she created, it's just, it's really breathtaking. And really, truly. I picked the right, I was smart. My intuition was spot on that day. I inked that right then.
Yeah.
Okay, she's not getting away. We're doing this thing.
That's
and she kept me on my stuff. So another part of publishing is I have a lot of books in my head, but I've not finished many of them. And it was definitely the partner I needed, because it was like, you promised me a workbook. Where is it? Keep working. Yeah. You can't stop. Like if I had my doubts, like I'd get myself doubt, I'm not good enough to write this, or I can't think of enough activities, or these aren't anything new that no one else has done. Like whenever I got those doubts, like she's like, you wrote it. You promised me a workbook. You better finish it. So it was really that accountability piece was amazing for me wanting to be a published author. So I'm grateful for her, and I chose the right partner too.
And it was great because we literally got the publishing deal and she got her doctorate within the same time period. So it was she got to be an author and a doctor at the same time. That, right?
What age range do you think could benefit mostly from completing the workbook? What would you say is the sweet spot for that age?
Dana, you take that one.
Well, so this is a funny story because the publisher and I had a little bit of a tiff over this one, not in a bad way, but it's really published for children. And we do think that it's really marketed towards children and they could really benefit from this, right? So if you're thinking like maybe 5-ish where they can really start to understand the concepts to like 11, 12. But the whole time I wrote the workbook, I was working with kids from 12 to 18 and sometimes 20. Wow. And they're the ones who helped me create all these activities. Like I was trying them on all of them and They were telling me and giving me feedback. So and then like Patrice said, like I was also trying them on my adult friends and being like, hey, what do you think of this activity? Does this work? Does this not? So I really feel like when we were creating it, we were really thinking about all ages, So while I don't know if I could even say there's a sweet spot, I would say that I think it won't apply to some people. I think I've worked with some kids that they couldn't connect. It felt too hard for them. They couldn't read a book about a parent and their children. It made them upset. And then I would just talk about animals instead of people, and they would do all the activities. So I guess to say that it still works, but I don't know. I feel like it could be for all. And I've even done some of these activities with as young as like 2. I did it with a whole family, and we did a piece of my heart is an activity where you kind of draw a heart and then everybody gets a piece of it and colors it in. And then we put it, it's almost like a puzzle. You put it back together. And I did that with a family. The youngest was 2 and the oldest was 60. And it was beautiful what came together, because it didn't matter if the kid just scribbled all over it. It was part of them in this heart going into this picture the family could put up. So
I also just think that, the idea is very simple, and it's for humans. It's humanity, and I think it's brilliant. And I love that answer, because I think all great things can be applied to multiple ages, not just one specific age. Everyone can enjoy it and get from it. So
that's right.
Very good. Todd, do you have anything, or are you good? Just want to make sure.
No, I'm just fascinated by all this in general. Not only just what the book and the workbook entail, but just how you guys met, in that way, and the instinct in terms of knowing that that's the right fit. We're going to do this and all that stuff. And I always, I don't know, I'm more curious as well about, and I kind of got the answer, but in terms of because I always wonder, some people want to stop at some point, and I know that Dana, you said with Patrice kept you going on a schedule in that way. But Patrice, were you ever self-doubting at times of I think it's great for the audience to know, I always believe that you have to just keep going, and you're always one step away from success in that way of doing it. You need a cheerleader or someone that's in your corner rooting you on, and you guys were that for each other. But me and my brothers were that for us in that way. One of us would be down, and the other two would be come on, we can do this, and it just helps in that way. And then you just have to find that support system, even if it's not family. Yeah.
And sometimes it has to be you, because sometimes you don't. There aren't other people supporting. I had to laugh. You cannot be a writer if you can't face total rejection, ghosting, being ignored, it's just part of the course. But you get these feelings, and they don't always come to fruition. It's not like every time I've had an instinct, it turned into gold. No, a lot of them turn into just another bag of coal. But you never know when that one is going to be the one that hits gold. And we hit gold here. The whole Invisible String thing was a miracle. And that's where, I guess, for me, the God thing, the spiritual thing comes in, because when you're being told from within to do something, then you have really no choice. Because when you don't follow that voice, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. When I don't listen to the voice, that voice gets really loud and really annoying, and like a woodpecker, pecking on my head. And I have no choice but to follow through. And thank goodness in this case I did with a lot of projects I've done. And each time it's just a fascinating thing, because each time I go out on another submission for a different project, they don't all sell. Some, I thought it was an amazing idea, but it's just, you keep creating, you keep going with all art, with all music. You might have one album that the next one, people can't get enough of you. You do the art for the art's sake. And if you happen to get blessed enough or lucky enough, or I still don't know exactly what it is, then yay. But for me, I do it for the art and for the message. Because the rest is whatever.
So what is next for, by the way, that's a great message for any creators, artists out there. I completely concur with Patrice. I think you delivered that message very right. You do it for the art and the message, and some will stick, some won't, and you just keep going. I love that. I'm curious to know what is next for each of you. Any more collaborations or individual projects you'd like to share with our community?
Dana, do you want to go and then I'll go? Do you want to Do you want to?
Am I allowed to say?
Yeah, you announce it. We just got some great news today, and
Oh, yes.
Well, I think we have a couple bit of news. So, the books, both the workbook and the books are getting published in lots of different languages. And the workbook just finally got picked up in Spanish.
Oh,
we are so excited. So the workbook, Patrice and I have been begging.
Yeah.
So we just found out today. We're getting published. The book is already Spanish available, and now the workbook will be. And I believe the leash was added to that list too. Yeah. So super cool.
That is so cool. Congratulations. That's a very, very cool thing.
It's so exciting. And, we can't say anything yet, but there may be other workbooks down the road based on other ones of the Invisible String series. When I got picked up with this incredible publisher, just my dream publisher, Little Brown for Young Readers out of New York, they bought not only the workbook and the paperback to the Invisible String, but they bought the Invisible Leash, which is my book about pet loss grief, which is now becoming, following her big sister, the Invisible String, the Invisible Leash is now becoming one of the big pet loss grief books for children. Similar concept, but it's for animals. I had a lot of requests from readers. Can you write a book just for the animals? And the Invisible Web is about our global connection, and You Are Never Alone, an Invisible String Lullaby is the baby book. And next year, next summer, just in time for back to school, comes the Invisible String Backpack, which is basically a story about a little girl on the first day of school who is, needless to say, not thrilled, and unhappy, and she discovers that she has this amazing magical backpack that is full of all the tools that she could possibly need to make it through not only her first day of school, but for life. So it's a book that teaches and empowers children to realize that they have all the tools they could ever really need within them. And then with another publisher, a non-invisible book I have coming out also next summer is called Ruby and Lonely. And it's about a little girl who has a very big problem with being lonely. And one day she discovers something that changes everything. And I won't say what it is, but I write books, as you can tell, that are my theme. Loneliness has been a theme for me. And I write books that matter to me, because chances are, if it matters to me, it's going to matter to a lot of other people that have some of those same needs. So and I'm writing my memoir, which is a completely different, that's like my whole life story and the sort of the backstory of who I am and, how it came to be that this little girl from England, because I was born in London, and I came from a very, very abusive, mentally ill family, a lot of trauma. And I guess the message of the memoir, it's my whole story, which is a big, my whole life story. But that love is so inherent. It's just a force of God that even if you don't have it modeled to you, that somehow love still is. It's a miracle that this little girl who never knew love, who really, it wasn't there in the family, somehow wrote this book about love for the masses. And I thought that was a story worthy of telling, because no matter where you've come from, and some of you come from some pretty hellacious backgrounds, there is not only is there no end to where you can go and what you can do, but the very fact that you went through what you went through can help someone else one day. It wasn't in vain. Our suffering is never in vain. How do you spin it into gold is the question to ask. How do I take this suffering? How do I take this pain? Because God doesn't make mistakes. So if this thing happened, there was some kind of lesson or message or thing to do something with it. So anyway, that's just how I feel about it. But
Well, there's a couple of cool comments I want to share. Jennifer says, "I see a cartoon series in the works."
Great. We are. Hopefully, the Invisible String will get. We have the dramatic rights, and hope. We've had interest, but nothing's gelled yet. But hopefully, it will be a series or a film soon. Fingers crossed. And if anyone's watching, the rights are available.
There we go. And Lana says loneliness is something we don't want to talk about. So that's awesome. Thank you.
That's exactly, Lana. That's why I wrote Ruby and Lonely. Loneliness is the one sort of shameful experience. You can talk about you know, if you have drug addiction or alcoholism, or if you have depression or anxiety, but to say, I feel lonely is like, ew, not lonely. You know, people don't want to talk about it. So thank you, Lana, for saying that.
Georgina wants to know, or Georgina says, I don't like loneliness. Is this book for adults also?
It's a children's book, but you know what, Georgina, this book's for you too. As I said earlier, children's books they're the bomb.
Yeah.
You know, they
I
get
agree.
right to the core of the message without all the fluff. It's like right there.
Completely
I use
agree.
children's books for all of my clients, whether they are 5 years old or 60 years old. So I use these children's books in all of my therapy.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess we're at the point where I should be asking you, how can people learn more about you, what you offer? I have this website, patricekarst.com. Is this a good starting point for people for all things Patrice?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. And
Okay.
they can also, you know, I always write everyone back. That was sort of my pledge. And when I wrote my very first book in 1995, I said, if anyone ever writes me, I'm going to always write them back. And now it's gotten a little busier. Sometimes I'm like, uh-oh. But I feel this need, right? For people to take the time out of their day to write an author, to say how meaningful their book was to them, they deserve a letter back. So yeah, you can connect with me there and find out what's going on. And of course, you know, Instagram and Facebook. And
mentioning Instagram, is this a good Instagram? At the Invincible String Insta.
Yes.
And then Facebook, it's just the Invincible String.
Invisible, but I like Invincible. That's good.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
That's a good one.
I was like, am I hearing right? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know.
That's the next book. We're taking it. We're taking it. It's an activity in the next workbook for sure. The Invincible String.
Invincible String.
I'm writing it down.
Did I miss anything else in terms of contact information for either one of you that you want to share? Otherwise, it's that time where we can get to the final message where, again, we ask our guests to share anything that's on their mind. But first, did I miss any other contact information that you guys want to share with our community?
No, I think you can find both of us through Patrice's website right now. I am on Instagram too. You can look it up by my name and probably find me. It's at blue_girl_art. That did not work. I'm going to put that in the chat. Don't know why I can't say those words. It's about the same as the Invincible
You're
String.
welcome to write to me and I will forward anything.
And she will make me write you back too, because that is the rule.
And we love
so I'll put mine in the chat.
We love doing workshops together and school visits and things like that too. So yeah.
Very, very cool. All right, so we're at that time, ladies, where and you guys can each go and have your own minute. Again, this is how we like to end the Power of Love show. We like to end it where we give our guests a minute or so, in this case, a minute or so each to leave our community with whatever you want to leave them with. It could be your favorite cooking recipe. It could be a poem. It could be a song, a memory. It could be another project you got coming up, a message, a quote, anything you want to leave our community with. What is the message you want them to take home today?
Go, Dana.
I'll use a quote from my website. Connection is an energy, a felt sense, a nonverbal experience of being noticed in the world.
Okay, real quick, what is the website? You said your website.
I know it's not very exciting yet, so just use Patrice's for now. I'll give it to you as soon as it's really ready. I need to do some more work on it.
Okay, we have it here, but but you know what? You did mention the, and I'm going to post it right here. The Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So this is Dr. Dana's Instagram for everyone who
is that right?
Know.
It's underscore.
Oh, it's not right.
You this came from you though, right?
I know. I gave you the wrong one. I'm on my phone trying to do this.
Let's take it off.
It's two underscores instead of the. It's the same, just with another underscore.
And before art?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's this.
Yeah, see, that's what I sent you exactly.
Okay. The internet messed it up.
There you go.
But okay, so here we go. This is for anyone who wants to follow Dr. Dana on Instagram. It's at blue_girl_art. And so I'm happy we left that. Okay, so Patrice, your turn.
Okay, so I guess I'm just going to keep it on the same theme. So, as I mentioned, I get a lot of letters. A lot of them are just letting me know how their kids are loving the book and this and that. But I also get a lot of letters from people that have lost either a loved one or a beloved animal. So, I do deal with death and grief multiple times a day. And one of the things when I get these letters, that I guess is the most meaningful thing, and the most meaningful thing that they can get back from a communication with me, is that though I wrote The Invisible String as a children's book, because I've always known about the invisible string. That's why that one day when I told my son about it, it just was the most obvious thing to me. I think I just assumed everyone knew. Even though I wrote it as a children's book, because that was a way to get the message out there, it's real. The invisible string is the realest thing in the entire universe, and the invisible leash. I mean, that thing, that power of love that does transcend time and space, no matter how angry someone gets, no matter how far away they move, no matter what bad feelings happen, no matter if they leave their body, that power of love is real, it's true, and that's the thing that matters in this lifetime. So just go for love, and you'll never regret it. Love is the most important thing. So in all situations, use love. We need more of it in the world. So love. That's my message.
Love it. Thank you both so much. There are some comments that I want to read before we let you go. Taj, was there anything you wanted to add before I get to these comments?
No, just amazing show. Just really fascinated by both of you guys in general, and I'm just thankful that you guys came on the show and shared it with the audience.
For having us.
Yeah.
Yes. One thing that Taj, you are more than welcome, but one thing that Taj always asks about is audiobooks. So
yes.
I know
the answer, but yeah.
The Invisible String, there's an audiobook.
Yes.
And Jennifer, a big supporter of ours, says, there is an audiobook of the Invisible String.
And there's an audiobook for the Invisible Leash, and there's an audiobook for the Invisible Web.
There you go. So Jennifer just bought the Invisible String, but as Patricia said, there's other audiobooks out there if you guys want to check them out. Clarissa says she loves your blouse, Patrice.
I know, it's like a kid.
There we go. Georgina says, Dana and Patrice, you were awesome, ladies. Made my home drive very interesting. Thank you for your positive energy.
Yes.
Love from Germany. Soleil says, sending hugs to the members of the community who experienced loneliness. Miss Silent Siren says, thank you so much, ladies, for enlightening us and being so kind and entertaining. Yes. Honey Martinez says, you ladies are so inspiring. Carla says, thank you, ladies, for all that you do and continue to do. Angie says, Patrice and Dana, you are amazing. Lena says, such positive people. Thank you for these books. And Jennifer says, thank you for responding to your admirers, Patrice. And then finally, Carrie says, thank you for a wonderful show. So thank you.
You guys have the best community.
I told you
that. I just want to
we have an amazing community.
I feel like we need to do activities next time. I feel like we need to bring us back, and we need to make you do some of the activities on the show. That's my favorite thing.
That sounds like a plan. You just let us know. I'm always down for that. It sounds fun.
Yes.
But I do want to thank you both on behalf of my brother Taj and the foundation for joining us today. It was very enlightening. Our community loved you both. So again, big thank you. Before we end this show, though, I want to thank Clements, who did a super chat, who just wanted to simply say love to you all. So thank you so much, Clements, for the super chat. It means a lot to us and our foundation. And then another thing is that, Todd, we should have talked about before was our fundraiser, our August fundraiser. We did it, you guys. We raised the $5,000 we wanted to raise. Of course, we partnered with Grief Coach, and that is going to give 100 grieving teens access to text messages and support for a full year during probably the most difficult time of their lives so far. So again, big thank you to everyone who contributed and helped us get there. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. A lot of love out there. For those, again, who are wondering, it's the Invisible String and the Invisible String Workbook. It's available at Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, and Amazon. You can get signed copies available directly on Etsy for Patrice Karst Dr account. I think I said all that right. Okay. That is it, everyone. Love to you always. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys next Wednesday at 1 p.m. All right. Be safe, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you
You guys
so
are
much.
welcome. Thank you both.